I hadn't heard her name in 13 years. Not since the night she left. Not since I stood at the top of the stairs, barely tall enough to see over the banister, and watched her walk out of our lives without looking back. Now her name sat neatly printed in gold on the wedding invitation I held in my hands. Monica On invites you to celebrate the wedding of Monica On and Daniel Reed. It wasn't the kind of name that should have meant anything to me. But the RSVP card mocked me from the kitchen counter. I couldn't even figure out why she'd sent it. Maybe guilt. Maybe she just wanted to prove something. Or maybe, she wanted me to see what I'd been replaced with. I told myself I wouldn't go. And yet, 2 weeks later, I was standing in a tailored black suit, surrounded by people I didn't know, watching my mother promise forever to a man I'd never met. Daniel Reed. He was calm. Serene, almost. The kind of man who didn't need to say much to be noticed. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver creeping into his dark hair and a quiet steadiness in his eyes. He smiled when she placed the ring on his finger. But I could tell. It wasn't love, it was convenience dressed in ceremony. And when he finally turned and looked at me, really looked at me, something in his expression flickered. Confusion, then curiosity. He leaned down and whispered something to my mother. Her eyes snapped to mine. Her lips thinned. She hadn't told him. Of course she hadn't. Later, at the reception. I'd made peace with being invisible. I stayed by the wall, sipping a glass of champagne I wasn't old enough to drink. No one noticed. No one asked. They just assumed I was a cousin or a friend of the groom's side. Until a small pair of arms flung around my legs. Are you my brother? I froze. The girl staring up at me had soft curls and big brown eyes, eyes like mine. She looked about 6. I opened my mouth, unsure of what to say, when someone gently touched her shoulder. Emily, sweetheart, came a low, even voice. Don't run off like that. I turned, and there he was. Daniel Reed. He looked even taller up close. His eyes flicked from Emily to me, taking in the resemblance. He didn't speak for a moment. Then he extended a hand. You must be Kai. His voice was deeper than I expected. Warm, even in its formality. I took his hand, half out of reflex. You found out. Just now. He gave a small smile. You look like her. But quieter. I didn't know how to respond to that. So I said nothing. He didn't press. Instead, he knelt beside Emily. Why don't you go find Aunt Kara, okay? I'll talk to Kai for a minute. She ran off without protest. And suddenly, it was just the two of us. You didn't tell me you had a son, he said quietly. His eyes followed her for a second, then returned to me. I shrugged. She doesn't mention me much. His jaw tightened, just slightly. I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened. I laughed under my breath. You're apologizing for her. I'm apologizing for what she should have done herself. He paused. You didn't have to come today. I didn't come for her. Then why did you? I didn't answer. He nodded, like he understood. Where are you staying? Hotel just outside the city. I can drive you. You don't have to. I want to. In the car. Silence. Just the sound of the road humming beneath us. His hands were steady on the wheel. Every now and then, he glanced at me, but never long enough to be obvious. You're studying? Literature. 3rd year. He nodded, impressed. Good major. Not very practical. Still good. I wasn't used to this kind of quiet. The kind that wasn't awkward. The kind that just existed. You love her? I asked suddenly. He didn't answer right away. Just exhaled slowly. I love Emily, that's what matters. We pulled into the hotel parking lot. He shifted into park but didn't turn off the engine. "Thank you," I said, reaching for the door. "Kai." I looked back. "She's lucky you came." He didn't say, "Monica." And somehow, I knew, he meant Emily. Daniel called 2 days after the wedding. "Emily's been asking for you." I should have said no. I should have reminded myself that I didn't belong in that house, with that woman, or her carefully arranged new life. But I heard her voice in the background, Emily's, and I said yes. I arrived on a Thursday. Monica wasn't home. "She's at some conference," Daniel said, holding the door open. "Back tomorrow." His tone was neutral. Maybe a little relieved. Emily greeted me by jumping into my arms and dragging me toward her room. "I want you to read me the princess story," Daniel chuckled softly behind us. "You've been replaced." That night, after Emily had fallen asleep with her head against my chest and the book still open in my lap, Daniel offered to show me the guest room. "You don't have to leave tonight. It's late." The guest room was warm, with pale walls and quiet corners. A stack of neatly folded towels sat on the bed, already waiting. "I figured you might come," he said. "Did you want me to?" He turned then, looking at me. A beat passed. Then another. I did. The house was too quiet. Too perfect. I wandered to the hallway, intending to grab a glass of water. Daniel was in his office. The door was ajar. Light spilled onto the hardwood floor. He was writing something. Pen scratching over paper. No laptop. No noise. Just the click of a clock and the soft, steady sound of his breathing. I didn't mean to linger. But I did. He looked up. Our eyes met. Neither of us spoke. And then, just the barest shift in his expression. Like he'd seen something in me that unsettled him. I turned away before he could say anything. My heart was too loud in my chest. The next morning, there was a folded note on my bedroom desk. Not typed. Handwritten. "Kai, you remind me of someone I used to be. Quiet, observant. The kind of person who watches the world instead of rushing to meet it. It's rare to meet someone who listens like you do. I see you." I stared at it for 10 minutes. Reread it. Folded it back. Pressed it into the pages of my notebook. That day, I watched him when he didn't know I was looking. The way he helped Emily with her drawing. The way he stood on the back porch, one hand in his pocket, eyes on the sky like he was waiting for something. He looked lonely. Not in a way that screamed. But in the quiet, worn way that settles into a man's bones. When he caught me watching, he didn't smile. He didn't look away either. Just, saw me. Again. That night, another letter. "You're not what I expected. But maybe expectations are overrated." I didn't write back. Not with words. But I left my bedroom door open. Monica returned on Sunday evening. Her heels clicked sharply across the marble floor. Her voice filled the house before her presence did. "Kai. I didn't know you were still here." Still. Not welcome back. Not I missed you. Just still. I stood at the bottom of the stairs as she came into view, all polished elegance and careful restraint. Daniel lingered behind her, quiet as always. "I stayed for Emily," I said. Monica's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course." Daniel shifted then. "I invited him to stay. Emily's happy when he's around." Her gaze flicked to him, then back to me. "That's sweet. But this isn't sustainable." I almost laughed. "I wasn't planning to move in." "Good. I just don't want her confused. You being here could make things complicated." She said it with a smile. That fake, brittle kind of smile I remembered from the nights she used to tuck me in like she didn't already have one foot out the door. Daniel said nothing. That night, I sat in the guest room, seething. Not because I wanted her approval. But because even now, after all these years, she could still make me feel like I didn't belong anywhere. A knock at the door. Then Daniel, "Can I come in?" I nodded. He didn't sit. Just hovered by the doorway. "I didn't know," he said softly. "How things were with her." "I'm used to it." "You shouldn't be." There was something raw in his voice. A weight I wasn't expecting. I thought, when she talked about her son, she made it sound like it was just complicated. Like there were misunderstandings. But this, he shook his head. "She erased you." I let her. "No," he said. "You survived her." The next morning, another note was left on my desk. "When you're here, the house feels different. Not just fuller, quieter, somehow. Like something finally makes sense." I shouldn't say that. But I did. I stared at it until the words blurred. That afternoon, I passed Monica in the hallway. She glanced at me. "You're staying long." "Depends," I said. "On whether your husband asks me to." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't mistake his kindness for something else." I tilted my head. "Should I be warning him, too?" She didn't answer. Just walked away. That night, I found Daniel on the back porch, a blanket over his lap, Emily asleep against his shoulder. He looked at peace. But only until he saw me. "I think she hates me," I said softly. "No. She fears you." "Why?" "Because you know her. Really know her." The moonlight softened his face. Made him look younger. Sadder. I sat down beside him, careful not to wake Emily. "She doesn't deserve you," I said. He looked at me then. And for a long moment, he didn't look away. "You make it hard to look away," he whispered. The storm came in the middle of the night. Not loud, not violent, just soft, relentless rain tapping against the windows like it had something to say. I couldn't sleep. Again. I wandered to the kitchen barefoot, quietly. Daniel was already there. Leaning against the counter, coffee in hand. Wearing a worn t-shirt and drawstring pants, barefoot too. We both froze when we saw each other. Then, a small smile from him. "Couldn't sleep?" I shook my head. "The rain." "Same." He poured me a cup. No words. Just the careful way he slid it across the counter toward me, like we'd done this before. And maybe, in another life, we had. We stood near the window, watching the way the water blurred the world outside. "I used to like rain," I murmured. Until I started associating it with waiting. Daniel turned slightly toward me. Waiting for what? For someone to come back who never did. He didn't ask who. He didn't have to. "You remind me of quiet things," he said suddenly. I turned to him. "Is that a good thing?" "It's dangerous," he replied. "To want something quiet in a life full of noise." Then, without thinking, my fingers brushed his. It should have been nothing. A small, accidental touch. But he stilled. So did I. His hand didn't pull away. Instead, it turned. Pressed against mine. A palm to a palm. Warm. Too warm. Too much. "I should go back to bed," I whispered. He nodded. But he didn't move. "Yeah," he said. "Me too." The next morning, I found the letter under my notebook. I lied. "You don't just remind me of quiet things. You make me want things I'm not supposed to want. Things I buried so deep, I forgot they had a shape. I'm sorry. I'll try to keep my distance." My fingers curled around the paper. My heart didn't know what to do, because I didn't want distance. And neither did he. Emily was drawing at the kitchen table again. Crayons everywhere. A masterpiece in progress, she called it. I sat across from her, coffee in hand, watching her quietly. She looked up suddenly. "Do you like Daddy?" I blinked. "Of course." "No, I mean," she tilted her head, eyes squinting like she was solving a puzzle. Like. I choked on my coffee. Emily giggled, pleased with herself. "I just think you look at him funny. Like Mommy used to. Before she got mad all the time." My hand tightened around the mug. She returned to her drawing like she hadn't just cracked open a box of secrets. Daniel avoided me for 2 days after that. No notes. No late-night coffee. Only polite nods and hollow greetings. I almost preferred the silence of the storm. It wasn't anger. It was fear. I knew that look in his eyes. He was trying to fix something before it broke. The problem was, I didn't want it fixed. On the 3rd day, I found him in the library, back turned, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows. He looked tired. Not just physically. Deep tired. Like everything inside him had been running uphill for too long. "You don't have to disappear," I said. He didn't turn around. "I'm not." "You are." Silence. Then, softly, "I made you a promise." I stepped closer. "Maybe I didn't want you to." He finally looked at me. And God, that look. "Don't say things like that," he whispered. "Not when I'm already losing control." I stood still. Not moving. Barely breathing. "What if I want you to lose it?" I asked. The room pulsed with something unspoken. Daniel took a step forward. Then stopped. "You don't know what you're asking." "I think I do." He closed his eyes. When he opened them, something inside had shifted. But he didn't touch me. Not yet. Instead, he turned away. "I need time," he said. And I let him go. Even if every part of me wanted to stay. It was after midnight when I heard the footsteps. Quiet. Hesitant. I lay in bed, still, listening as they paused outside my door. Then walked away. I wanted to open it. Wanted to say, "You don't have to go." But I didn't. Because Daniel was trying. And I didn't want to be the reason he failed. Downstairs, he broke. He sat in the dark living room, head in his hands. The rain had started again, like the sky knew what lived between us, and cried in our place. Daniel whispered something I wasn't meant to hear. "I don't know how to stop." In the morning, everything was normal again. Coffee. Eggs. Emily's messy ponytail and backpack too big for her shoulders. But then Monica appeared at the door, smile too polite, eyes too sharp. She hugged Emily with one arm and looked around the house like it didn't belong to her anymore. When Daniel handed her a forgotten sweater, her fingers brushed his longer than necessary. Then her eyes flicked to me. A pause. A calculation. And then, lightly, "You've been spending a lot of time here lately, haven't you, Kai?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "It's peaceful here." Her gaze sharpened, but she said nothing else. That was enough. She knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I wrote. Not a message. Not a confession. Just. I folded it. Slipped it into a book I'd leave behind eventually. "You make me feel like I'm waking up after a long sleep. Like I've lived on the edge of things, and you're the first real thing I've touched. I don't know if it's wrong, or just complicated. But I don't think I'll ever be the same again." Maybe someday, he'd find it. Maybe he'd know. Maybe by then, it wouldn't matter. I wasn't looking for him. I wasn't even supposed to be home. But there he was, Daniel, sitting on the floor of his office, surrounded by scattered papers and a bottle of wine half spilled across a photograph. The photo was of them. Daniel, Monica, and Emily, back when smiles didn't look forced. His hands trembled as he picked it up. Not to save it, but to press it against his forehead like it hurt him. He didn't notice me right away. So I watched. Not out of pity. But because I'd never seen him this raw. His shoulders shook, and then he whispered something, so quiet, I barely caught it. I'm trying to do the right thing. And then, softer. But I can't stop thinking about him. My breath caught. I stepped back quietly, heart thudding, careful not to let the floor creak. That weekend, I was in the bookstore downtown, picking up something for Emily. The guy behind the counter, smiley, tall, soft eyes, recognized me. We'd gone to college together. We talked. Laughed a little. It was nothing. But when I turned around, Daniel was standing near the door. He hadn't come in. Just, stood there. Watching. When our eyes met, he looked away, like he'd caught himself feeling something he didn't want to name. And just like that, he was gone. That night, he didn't speak to me. But I saw the photo was gone from his office. And the wine bottle too. He was cleaning up the pieces. Or burying them. I knocked lightly on his door. Daniel opened it, eyes tired, jaw set like he'd been trying to decide something all day and kept losing to himself. You okay? I asked. He nodded. Too fast. I held up the book Emily wanted me to read with her. She's asleep. I thought maybe, you want to stay for a while, he finished for me. I waited. Then he stepped aside. We sat across from each other on the floor, the book between us unopened. Neither of us reached for it. Instead, Daniel asked, who was the guy at the bookstore? I blinked. He looked down. Not my business. He's no one, I said softly. His jaw clenched. Silence. Then. I don't like seeing you with someone else. He hadn't meant to say it. I saw the way his eyes flicked up, like the words escaped before he could lock them down. Neither of us spoke for a moment too long. Then I said, carefully, why? Daniel stood suddenly, like the floor was burning. I think you should go. I didn't move. So he looked at me, raw, wrecked, and full of everything he refused to say. I'm trying to stay a good man, Kai. And I'm not asking you not to be. His voice cracked. You don't understand. I don't get to want things anymore. That night, I found ashes in the fireplace. Something had been burned, still curling at the edges. I picked up the smallest fragment. Scrawled in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting, if I were someone else, I'd say it. I stood there for a long time, the paper cooling in my hand. The rain was relentless. Thunder crawled across the sky like it was too tired to scream. Power flickered. Lights went out. And we were two silhouettes in a house filled with quiet ghosts. I should go, I said, though we both knew I couldn't. Daniel didn't argue. Didn't offer for me to stay either. But he didn't leave the room. Instead, he reached for the small drawing Emily had left on the table earlier. One we hadn't really looked at until now. A house. A girl with pigtails. And two men standing close together, hand in hand. Underneath it, in messy crayon, me. Daddy. Kai. His fingers trembled around the paper. She sees it. I stayed quiet. She sees something I've tried so hard to bury. I moved closer. You think it's something to hide? He looked up sharply. It has to be. Lightning flashed outside. Then thunder cracked like something splitting in half. And Daniel did, too. I wake up wanting you here. I go to sleep telling myself not to. I try to love Monica again because it's safe, but she's not the one I keep seeing in this house. You are. He took a breath that sounded like it hurt. I'm not allowed to feel this. You're. I'm what? I asked. His voice dropped. You're the only thing that feels real. I swallowed. And for a moment, I didn't know what to say. So I didn't. I just sat beside him, shoulder brushing his, the space between us thinner than ever. We didn't touch. But it felt like we had. The storm had softened by morning, but the damage had already been done. Inside the house, everything was still. Too still. I hadn't left. Neither had he. We sat at the kitchen table in the kind of silence that felt like a held breath. The only sound was the coffee brewing, and the occasional creak of wood as if the house itself remembered too much. Daniel didn't look at me. But his hand was resting on the table, tensed, curled, so close to mine it felt like gravity. And then it happened. He reached out. Slowly. Like it hurt him. Like he hated himself for it. Fingers brushed mine. Not by accident. Not this time. We didn't speak. We just sat there, hands barely touching, as if the contact alone could split us open. And then. The sound of keys at the door. Monica. Daniel pulled his hand back like he'd touched fire. He stood too fast. His chair scraped sharply across the floor. Monica's voice called from the front hall, Daniel. He didn't answer. Just looked at me with panic painted in quiet guilt, and whispered, "Go." I left through the side door. Rain still clung to the earth, and my heart ached with everything that didn't happen. Everything that almost did. Later that night, a note slipped under my door. I can't stop thinking about your hand on mine. But I can't do this to her. Not yet. Not like this. Monica was back. Her laughter filled the kitchen, familiar and bright, but it felt like someone else's memory. I watched them from the hallway. Daniel's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. His hands didn't touch hers like they used to. And when his gaze drifted, just once, it landed on me. He looked away too fast. Later that afternoon, Emily sat beside me on the porch swing, a coloring book open across her lap. The wind picked up gently, carrying the scent of rain-soaked wood and something fading. "I like it better when you're here," she said simply. I glanced at her. "Why?" "Because Daddy talks more. And he looks at you like he forgot he was sad." My chest tightened. Children don't lie. They just see. Inside, Monica stood in the doorway, holding her coffee, watching us. "I think she's gotten too attached," she said quietly to Daniel. But her eyes were on me. "I'll talk to him," he murmured. But he didn't. Not until the evening, when he caught me alone in the hallway. "You should take some space," he said. Voice low. Controlled. I nodded. "If that's what you want." He hesitated. His hands balled into fists at his sides. "It's what I have to do. So do it," I whispered. I stepped past him. But I felt the shift. Something in him broke the moment I agreed to let go. That night, I packed a bag. And Daniel stood outside my window. Not knocking. Not speaking. Just watching. Like the ache had finally turned into something unbearable. I left that night. Packed only what I came with. Daniel didn't say anything. He stood in the doorway like he wanted to stop me. Like his whole body was screaming no. But his mouth said nothing. So I walked. Hours passed. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of his hand pulling away, of his eyes flickering to me like I was both the temptation and the sin. And then. A knock. Low. 3 times. Like hesitation. I opened the door. He was there. Rain in his hair. A quiet kind of ruin in his face. I shouldn't be here, he said. You are. Silence. And then. He stepped in. His hand went to my face like he'd memorized the shape of me. I tried to forget you tonight, he said. I held her hand and felt nothing. I looked at the place where you sat at the table and couldn't breathe. I should have stopped him. But I didn't. His mouth brushed mine like he wasn't sure he was allowed. And then, again. Slower. Firmer. We kissed like we'd waited lifetimes. Hands tangled. Breaths shaky. We fell onto the couch like we were falling out of orbit. His hands slipped under my shirt. My fingers curled into his back. His mouth kissed my throat like a prayer he wasn't supposed to say. It was soft. Then desperate. Then soft again. But just before it could go further, he stopped. Laid his forehead against mine. And whispered, "Not like this. Not when I still belong to someone else." We stayed there. Breathing. And when he left before sunrise, he didn't look back. The scent of him was still on my pillow. I didn't sleep. Not after his mouth left mine, not after his fingers traced a goodbye down my spine. We stopped just before it became irreversible. But my heart didn't. It had already crossed. I didn't hear from him the next day. Or the one after. But I saw him. From a distance. At the market, picking up Emily. On the porch, sitting beside Monica, body stiff and lips pressed into silence. He looked like he hadn't slept either. He looked like me. Monica showed up on my doorstep again. No child, no smile, just a tight jaw and a truth she was done pretending not to see. "You slept with him." I flinched. "No," I whispered. "Not, completely." "That's worse," she said. "Because that means you could have stopped. You just didn't want to." She stood there, arms folded, voice not angry but tired. So tired. "I loved him for years, Kai," she said. "But I don't think he ever looked at me the way he looks at you." And then she said the thing I never expected. "I'm leaving." I stared at her. "What?" "He's already gone," she said softly. "He just doesn't know how to admit it yet." That night, Daniel came again. No rain. No excuses. Just him. And the weight of everything. "I wanted to come back," he said. I waited. But I didn't want it to be like that again. Halfway. Rushed. Ruined. I nodded, holding the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "I hurt her," he said. "But I hurt myself worse. Because when I kissed you, it felt like home, and I hated myself for it." He took a step closer. "I need to fix what I broke before I ask you to choose me." Another step. "But don't think, for 1 second, that I won't come back for you." Then he left. This time, I watched him go. The days that followed felt like limbo. Monica moved out of the house first. Took Emily, a few suitcases, and the family photos off the wall. Daniel stayed. I don't know which of them left first, really. She just had the courage to walk out the door. I didn't see him for a week. Not even from a distance. Until I walked past the bookstore and found him sitting on the steps. Hood up. Eyes closed. A cup of cold coffee beside him like he'd been there for hours. He looked up when I stepped closer. "I thought you were avoiding me," I said. "I was trying," he said. I sat beside him without asking. For a moment, we just existed there. No touch. No words. Just the gravity of what we were too afraid to name. "She's staying with her sister in Portland," he said finally. "Emily keeps asking when I'll come visit." And I told her I needed to figure things out first. When I stood to leave, he reached for my wrist. Held it gently, like something sacred. "I miss you," he said. I'm still here, I whispered. He smiled. Soft. Wrecked. I don't want to be someone who loves you halfway. I nodded. Then don't be. That night, I wrote him a letter. Didn't send it, just folded it carefully and slid it into the back of a drawer. But it felt like breathing again. When you're ready, come find me. Not in pieces. Not with regrets. Just you. Just us. No one left behind. It took 2 months. 2 months of not touching. 2 months of healing, of messy conversations and custody lawyers and tearful apologies whispered between flights to Portland. And then. He showed up. Same porch. No rain this time. Just golden sunlight brushing his shoulders like it already forgave him. He knocked. I opened the door. He didn't speak. Just held out a small, folded letter. My handwriting. The one I never sent. I found it, he said. And I came. He looked thinner. Tired. But, lighter. I'm not someone else's anymore, he said. There's no halfway left in me. Silence. Then. I don't know how to start over. You don't have to, I said. Just start from here. We didn't kiss right away. We sat on the floor, shoulder to shoulder, knees touching like confession. He told me how he left. How Monica cried, but said thank you. How Emily asked if she could still draw me birthday cards. I cried then. He kissed the tear before it fell. That night, we slept in the same bed. Fully clothed. My back against his chest. His arms around my waist. No rush. No ache. Just breath. And warmth. And quiet. Sometimes, love doesn't explode. Sometimes, it waits. Sometimes, it survives long enough to be chosen.